What happens when a kind-hearted black grandmother enters court with a homemade pie and becomes the target of a judge's public mockery? She stayed silent. But what happened next left the entire courtroom frozen in disbelief. Before we begin the story, write in the comments where you are watching us from. Let me tell you something straight, baby. There ain't a soul in Milton County who bakes a better peach pie than me. That's not bragging. That's census confirmed. 3 blue ribbons at the church fair, 2 write-ups in the county paper, and 1 pastor who said it brought tears to a grown man's heart. So when I carried that pie through the courthouse doors that morning, folks knew it wasn't no ordinary Tuesday. I wasn't there for no legal mess. Or at least, I didn't think I was. I was bringing that pie to Mr. Calvin, the clerk who helped me print out forms last month when the city tried to charge me twice for trash pickup. That man stayed overtime, didn't ask for nothing, just smiled and said, "Ms. Wilson, folks like you built this town." So I baked for him. That's my way. But the second I stepped through the scanner, the air changed. First thing that hit me? Cold. Not the kind you get from air conditioning. Number. This was that institutional chill. The kind that reminds you whose name is on the building and who's just passing through it. Second thing? That guard at the door. Young, white, looked like he hadn't seen a wrinkle in his life. He scanned my pie like it was ticking. Said, "Ma'am, we don't allow outside food. Might be tampered." Tampered? I laughed. Honey, the only thing that pie's filled with is love, butter, and a little nutmeg. He didn't smile. Just called another officer. That's when I should have known. This wasn't going to be a simple drop-off and walk-out. Next thing I know, a woman walks up in heels sharp enough to slice butter. Blonde bob, clipboard, attitude thicker than grits. "You're Ms. Wilson?" she asked, like my name had dirt on it. "You have a citation." I blinked. "A what now?" She handed me a pink slip, said I'd been summoned for disruptive behavior and obstructing a government official. For what? Crossing Main Street and apparently laughing too hard when Officer Doyle dropped his notepad, chasing a teen who ran the light. "You're being tried today," she added. "Courtroom C, Judge Brady." Now, let me pause. If you from around here, you know Judge Brady. Tall, pale, always looks like he just smelled something foul. That man's mouth curves upward like he's smiling, but don't let it fool you. It's a grin, not a smile. Ain't been a black defendant in his court who didn't feel it. I walked into that courtroom holding my pie like a shield. Mr. Calvin wasn't even on duty that day. The benches were half full, mostly white folks waiting their turn, tapping phones, whispering. Then they called my name. State of Georgia versus Cora Mae Wilson. I stood. "Bring your pie, Ms. Wilson," Judge Brady smirked from the bench. That was his opening shot. He read my charge like it was comedy. Mocked my middle name. "I swear to you," he said. "Cora Mae? That sounds like someone who brings biscuits to a fist fight." The courtroom chuckled. I didn't. I just stood there, dignified, straight-spined, Sunday best hat and all. "I'm here for what reason, Your Honor?" I asked calmly. He leaned forward. "To explain to the people of this county why you think it's acceptable to make a mockery of a police officer during an active situation." I replied. I laughed. I did not interfere. I stepped off the curb and said, "Baby, you okay?" when he dropped his pad. "You undermined authority," he said. "And now you bring baked goods to, what? Soften us up." That's when the second wave of laughter came. Bitter, cruel. A few snorts from the audience. Someone said, "Offer him a slice," and they all giggled like schoolboys. I took a breath. That deep grandmother who's raised 3 generations kind of breath. And I said, "This pie was for someone who helped me, who respected me. That's all." Brady waved it off. "We'll consider your pastry as a symbol of remorse." I wanted to cry. I didn't. My mama didn't raise me to cry in front of wolves. But I did feel something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not even anger. Shame. Not for me, but for them. A room full of people who could laugh at a woman being humiliated over a smile and a slice of homemade peas. I saw one young sister in the back, maybe 21, 22. She had a notebook in her lap and a phone in her hand, low, camera just peeking out between her fingers. Our eyes met. I nodded. She blinked slow, like she understood. I didn't know her name, didn't know what she planned, but I felt it. This wasn't over. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. Stay with me. This story's just heating up. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Not after the way that courtroom turned into a roast session at my expense. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter. Not the kind that comes from a good joke, but the kind that feels like a hand on your neck, pushing you down, telling you, stay in your place. I made tea, sat in my rocking chair, watched the moon. My hands rested on my lap, like they did back when I held my daughter during her first fever. Except this time, there was no fever. Just a cold that came from somewhere deeper, somewhere that doesn't break with a blanket or a prayer. Morning came with a knock. "Grandma, you on the internet." That was my grandson, Marcus, 18, all limbs and excitement, holding his phone like it was a winning lottery ticket. He showed me a video, blurry at first, but then clear as day. Me, standing there, holding that pie like a shield. Judge Brady's voice echoing, "Should we call it Exhibit A for Apple?" Crowd laughing. My silence. Then the caption, "Black Grandma Silences Racist Judge with One Look." Over 500,000 views. By breakfast, by lunch, 1 million. My phone rang so much, I thought about unplugging the thing altogether. Reporters, cousins I hadn't heard from since Clinton was in office, folks from church, folks from nowhere. Everybody had something to say. And they were all saying the same thing. "Cora, you didn't say a word, but you said everything." Still, I felt torn. On the one hand, I was glad folks saw it, glad someone caught it. But on the other, I was a private woman. I planted okra, not stories. I made jam, not headlines. Now strangers were calling me a symbol. But let me tell you what hit me hardest. Around 2:30 that day, I got a call from Ms. Loretta, who teaches 9th grade English at Milton High. She said one of her students asked, "Miss L., can we talk about that lady in court instead of reading the textbook today?" She reminded me of my Nana. I had to sit down. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to clip my roses, needed something normal to ground me, and found 2 cars parked across my lawn. Reporters, big city kinds too. One of them tried to hand me a mic. I told him, "Son, I got clippers in one hand and thorns in the other. You really want to try me right now?" He backed off. Instead, I walked back inside, sat down, and turned on the TV. CNN, Fox, even the local channel that usually just covers weather and bake sales. They were all running that same courtroom clip. Everyone had an opinion. Most were with me, but not all. Some folks said I provoked it, that I brought it on myself with the pie. One even wrote, "Why bring food to a courtroom unless you're trying to manipulate?" I looked at the screen and whispered, "Because I was saying thank you." You ever tried that? And you know what hurt the most? It wasn't just strangers doubting my intentions. It was people I grew up with. People who sat in church pews beside me, who now whispered, "Cora brought attention she didn't need." Let me ask you this. When did dignity start needing permission? That evening, the city held a town council meeting. Not because they wanted to, but because the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Folks were mad. Signs popped up across the square. Respect ain't optional. We stand with Cora. Now here's the twist. I didn't ask for any of this. Didn't call nobody. Didn't post. Didn't march. But justice? Sometimes it marches for you. Around 6:45 p.m., there was another knock at my door. This time, it was Darlene, my neighbor 2 blocks down. She handed me a small box. "This is from my daughter," she said. "She's the one who recorded it. Said she thought you'd want a copy on something real, not just online." Inside was a USB drive in a velvet pouch. She added, "She said she knew you weren't just holding a pie. You were holding the line." That girl's name? Naomi. 19, law student. Quiet as a shadow, but saw everything like a hawk. I clutched that pouch and nodded. My throat tightened. I ain't cry. No, not yet. But something shook loose inside me. Like a stone that had been sitting on my spirit just cracked. Meanwhile, the courthouse was burning. Figuratively, of course. Judge Brady released a statement. Said he regrets the tone of his comments. That he did not intend offense. Didn't intend? Man, please. You don't laugh a woman out of her dignity by accident. The city announced a review of judicial conduct procedures. The mayor said words like inclusive and community healing. I sipped my tea and rolled my eyes. Healing doesn't start with press releases. It starts with accountability. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of shame from the folks who think a robe gives them the right to humiliate elders. That night, I turned off the TV and looked out the window. Street was quiet, but the silence didn't feel cold this time. It felt full, like something was building. Not a storm, a reckoning. This is the climax. Let me start with this. I didn't plan to go back into that courthouse, not after what they did to me, not after the way I stood there, pie in hand, dignity on the line, while they all chuckled like it was open mic night at my expense. But sometimes, life don't ask for your permission. It just taps you on the shoulder and says, "It's time." And on Friday morning, it was time. See, the city had called for a public ethics hearing. First one in over a decade. A community listening session, they called it. Though half the council looked like they didn't plan to listen to nobody but themselves. Judge Brady was scheduled to speak. They said he'd be addressing recent concerns. That's the fancy way of saying, we're in hot water and hope nobody turns up with signs. Well, bless their hearts, they underestimated Milton County's memory. When I arrived, the line wrapped around the block. Folks in church hats, folks in overalls, teachers, nurses, veterans, teenagers with phones, and elders with folded chairs. Even Mr. Grady, who once told me he don't get into politics, was holding a hand-painted sign that read, "We heard the laughter. Now, hear us." Inside, the courtroom looked different. Gone was the smug air. Gone were the snickers. There was no laughter this time. Only eyes. Watching. Waiting. I sat 3 rows from the front. Naomi sat beside me, her camera steady in her lap, red light glowing. That girl came ready. I didn't ask her to. She just knew. Judge Brady walked in through the side door like he always did. But he didn't strut this time. No leaning back in his chair, no smirk curling his lip. He looked like a man walking into a kitchen where the fire alarm had already gone off. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I'd like to address the recent incident that has caused understandable concern." I folded my arms. He continued, "And express my sincerest regret for any perceived disrespect that may have occurred in my courtroom." Perceived? Perceived? Naomi's camera tilted slightly upward. I didn't say a word. Just gave that girl the side-eye we all learn by the time we're 5. Brady went on. "While I did not intend to cause harm, I understand that my tone and comments may have come across as inappropriate." Came across? Sir, this wasn't some grocery bag accidentally brushing my hip. This was a full-blown performance, and I was the punchline. Then he looked up, straight at me. For the first time since all this started, that man actually looked at me. And I saw something flicker. Not guilt, not quite. More like the realization that the room wasn't laughing with him anymore. He cleared his throat again. "Ms. Wilson, I owe you a personal apology. I did not treat you with the dignity you deserved. Now, let me be real. That moment? It didn't erase what he did. Didn't rewind the humiliation. Didn't magically patch up the hole in my chest. But it did something else. It shifted the room. Because when he said it, finally said it, folks inhaled at the same time like someone opened a window. I stood up, not planned, not dramatic, just stood. And I said, 'I accept your words, but dignity ain't borrowed. You don't give it back like a library book. You protect it from the start.'" Silence. Then someone clapped. Then someone else. And soon that whole courtroom stood. Not for me, not even really against him, but for something bigger, something older, something sacred. The counsel announced that Judge Brady would be placed on administrative leave pending a full review. They used a lot of words like integrity and rebuilding trust. I just nodded. Later, on the courthouse steps, a reporter shoved a mic in my face and asked, "Ms. Wilson, do you feel vindicated?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I feel seen. That's more than most get." Then I handed her a slice of peach pie wrapped in foil. Her eyes welled up. And you know what? Mine did too. Because that pie? It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't surrender. It was proof that even after being mocked, filmed, and thrown into the spotlight like I was on trial for breathing, I was still me, still kind, still strong, still standing. I went home, took off my shoes, sat on my porch, and for the first time in days, the breeze felt warm again. Naomi texted me later. "Miss Cora, they're calling it the pie that changed Milton County." I smiled. "Tell them," I typed back, "that pie didn't change a thing. The people did. Sometimes all it takes is one silent moment to speak louder than 1,000 verdicts. Justice don't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it walks in wearing church shoes, holding a pie.